Welcome to Kion Lab. Today we are going to discuss database languages. Now database languages, as the question comes in the mind, why the database language is required. As we have started our discussion from beginning of the system. So here we have a system that we would like to design. Now this is a system where you can have banking system, any database system we would like to design. Now to design this database system, we have learned which data models are supported. So data models are supported. So in that we have discussed different data models: relational, object oriented, semi-structure. And this in the data model, if we have selected the relational data model, we are supposed to learn the language which is going to define, and rather we called it as a database language. This database language is supposed to derive like this: relational model, it is going to define and it will gives me the data model, and in turn it will derive the system database. Now these database languages are supposed to helps us to design the data model. Now here we can observe there are 4 different types of data languages: data manipulation language, data definition language, data control language, and transactional language. So in this video, these 2 languages we are going to see in details, and next languages, as we are going to see the transactions, that time it will be more clear. So data manipulation language, as the name itself suggests, data manipulation. Suppose you have a database. Now database, as we have a huge data, so that would be represented something like this. We have the database where we have student ID, date of birth, and address. Now here already some information is stored, and that we would like to manipulate. So here some information is there: ID or roll number of the student, date of birth, and address. So manipulation, I would like to make the entry of a student, date of birth, some date of birth, address. So that entry I am going to do over here. So I am entering the data. So insertion, I am inserting a data or information into the database. Now similarly, if I would like to find out a particular student, a particular information that I can retrieve, any changes I would like to make, suppose some address of one of the students has changed, that can be made over here. So modification or updation, this can be done. And suppose some student leave the school, then I am able to delete that entry. Similarly, this is possible for all types of databases. Either you should be able to insert into the database detail values, then you should be able to retrieve, you should be able to modify, and you should be able to delete. So data manipulation, you are manipulating the data. So these operations you are supposed to perform. So these are the types of accesses: retrieval, insertion, deletion, and modification. Languages for accessing and manipulating the data organized by the appropriate data model, that is called as data manipulation language, or it is also called as the query language. So how this would be performed on the database: some information is stored, and to retrieve that information we required query language, and this is been called as data manipulation language. So with the help of this query language, it is possible for us to perform all these operations or to manipulate the data in the database. So there are 2 types: procedural and non-procedural. or declarative. Procedural, user specifies what data is required and how to get those data. So here procedure also user is going to mention. Now not just a query, so I want only all the students who have scored 60% mark. So this is declarative, non-procedural. I'm not asking the data, I'm not providing any details or procedure or a function to the database to retrieve that data. So that is a declarative. And suppose in that case I'm providing any procedure, like in which format, and after retrieving the data do any calculation, finding out the interest rate or something like that. In that case I'm mentioning the procedural. So procedural database language, PL/SQL, it supports the procedures. When we'll start the SQL, that time it will be more clear. And declarative is a normal. User specifies what data is required without specifying how to get those data. So here I'm not giving the procedure, only I'm asking, please give me this data. All the students who have scored 60% marks, all the bank accounts who have less number of amount, and so on and so forth. SQL is the most widely used query language. The portion of DML that involves information retrieval is called the query language. Now data definition language, it is been based on the schema, or it derives the schema. So data definition, we are defining the data. Now once it has been clear how to retrieve that data, manipulation through the query language. Now the query language, as I'm retrieving the data, I'm storing the data, it is supposed to store some variables. So schema I'm supposed to write here, just like in the earlier video we have discussed the schema and instances, where schema allows us, it works like a variable in the programming language. So here whatever the schema or whatever the information, so ID or roll number of the student, what is its type of information it will hold, whether it is an integer or a character. So I have to declare that integer or a character. Name, it could be character. So here, or how many characters it is allowed. So here data definition, I am defining the data, what is the data I'm using, that I'm going to define over here. Now here is the example how in the how data definition language you are supposed to use. It is the specification notation for defining the database schema. It provides facility to specify consistency constraint. Now in the next slide we are going to see the constraints. So this is the SQL statement. Create table account where account is identified by account number and balance. So it could be identified something like this, account number and balance. Now here account number is defined something like this, character of 10. So it will accept the value account number maximum 10 characters long. Beyond that, if you'd like to enter, you'll get the error. If instead of character you are trying to enter the integer, you'll get error. Similarly here integer, it can accept only integers and not any other value, not even character, not even alphanumeric. So you're defining the data base language. DDL compiler generates a set of tables stored in the data dictionary which contains metadata. Now data definition language, here data dictionary contains metadata, means that is data about data. Now data definition language not only defines database schema but also the integrity constraints. Now integrity constraints, we have discussed little bit about integrity constraints in the instances as schema video. So here some rules, some privileges it is going to be set. Apart from designing the schema, here some privileges has to be assigned. So these privileges are domain constraints, referential integrity, assertion and authorization. All those are we are going to see in this coming slide. Domain constraint, as I have already told you, in the data definition schema you have ID as in integer, here I have ID and here I have name, and name I have characters or varchar. So characters, 10 characters. So here in this column, this is the domain. What is the domain of this ID or this whole column? Is integer. So this is the domain of this whole column. The domain is integer, so it will accept only integer values and not any other value. Name, its domain is character, as we have define the schema, so it will accept only characters and not any other value. So this is called as the domain constraint. So through this we are defining the data definition language, that is the constraints we are going to assign. Now referential integrity, and as we are talking about the SQL statement, it is called as the foreign key. Referential integrity, now you can see the example here. You have course and department, these two entities, course and department. These two entities I have. Course is having the parameters course ID, course name and department name. Course ID, course name and department name. And here in the department entity we have department name and building budget. So these two parameters. Now what I am trying to do, referential integrity, I am taking the reference of this department name into this entity course. So if I would like to connect these two tables, I am making some reference. So reference of another entity, this is called as the entity. The reference, this D name, is the prime entity in this table. This is a prime entity, and this could be refer into another table course where we can get that same parameter name, and it is called as the reference, or in SQL statements we called it as a foreign key. When we're talking about foreign key in the coming slides, there it will be more clear. So this is the reference. In the course entity, we have the reference of D name from another entity, that is department. So this is called as the referential integrity. Next one is assertion. An assertion is any condition that the database must always satisfy. Above two constraints, that is domain constraint and referential integrity, are special form. Now what is this assertion is? Assertion is nothing but any limit or any, you are checking the validity. Assertion is nothing but checking the validity. For example, apart from above two constraints, suppose I would have one statement: every department must have at least 5 courses offered every semester. So here I am checking the validity. To run the course, it could have each semester, it could run, every department could run 5 courses. So it is going to check the validity. So this is what has been called as the assertion. And last one is the authorization. Authorization is nothing but a type of access on various data values in database. So what are the type of access to the databases? We have read authorization, then write authorization, or it is called as the insert. Then third one is update and delete. So authorization, that is nothing but access to the database. So depending on the type of the user, so abstraction level we have already discussed. So there at each level, starting from the physical level to the view level, at every stage every user has all this authorization. So authorization are set through the SQL statements That is, either you are able to grant the authority or you can take out, revoke the authority. So DDL example, we can see here, create table department. This is the SQL statement, create table. This is the syntax, create table department, and here you can mention the attributes that will define this department. So you can have department name, and we can mention the domain, that is character. So domain constraint come over here, building, character. Again, this is having the same domain. So this is called as the DDL statement, data definition language statement. Now next one, DML statement, the example we'll see. We can have the query, or suppose we would like to get all the details of, like we are supposed to want all the names of the department, name of all the departments with budget greater than 95,000. So how do we write the DML statement for this? Now here we'll write, this is the SQL statement, select. Now here you will mention the attribute names. Select table name dot attribute name, department name, comma, budget. From, structure is something like this, from the table name, department where budget is greater than 95,000. So here this would work something like this. Output you will get here in the table, you have two columns. One is department name, this is attribute name, department name, and another column is budget, and whatever the department name here, those gets displayed. Here you will get some entries. So this is all together we have studied. So here you can get the SQL statements for database languages. In the DDL languages, you can have all these statements: create, alter, drop, rename, and truncate. In data manipulation language, you can get all these statements: select, insert, update, and delete. In transaction control language, you can have commit, rollback, and save point. And in data control language, you can have grant and revoke. Now we can summarize today's session, that is database languages we have studied. They are of two types: data definition language and data manipulation language. Data definition language allows us to write schema for the database system, and data manipulation language allowed us to manipulate the data using the statements: insert into database, delete, modify, and update. So this is the concept of database languages. Thank you.